Welcome to SoCal HIMSS Kickoff Women in Health IT event. Thank you all for coming and being here tonight. My name is Bella Zaghi. I'm president of SoCal HIMSS, and I'm also, thank you. Thank you. I'm also chair for Women in Health IT division. Before we begin, I'd like to thank a few and give acknowledgments to a few people. First is I want to acknowledge our generous sponsors that are here tonight. Improvada, represented by Christy Murfitt. And Sirius, represented by Carolyn Singer. And Orion Health, represented by our very own Jerry Pavia. Thank you. Tonight's event would not have been possible also without some of the volunteers and the female board members that were helping out. So I'd like to acknowledge our volunteers. We have Jackie, and then some of the female board members from our board is Jerry Pavia, Crystal, Sarah, and Karen Kennedy, who couldn't make it here tonight, but she's here in spirit. So I want to thank you guys for all your hard work and your support and helping plan this event. So beginning the Women in Health IT division was really a personal journey of mine. Some of you might not know, but I'm a first-generation Iranian American, and going into a career where it was not known in my heritage was a big deal. And also something that the women in my family and in my ancestors didn't know of, and their gender roles were very different, was a big deal. So I didn't really have any guidance or role models or leaders in my own circle, in my community, and I had to reach out to people outside of my circle for support and guidance. And so I saw a huge value in networking, and what I learned is when I started networking and I met people, they really guided me, they gave me advice, and they gave me the courage to go into a career that was very different for people that I was around. So I definitely saw a huge value in that. So from that networking, I felt like maybe women in our industry, in our community, in our area, it's so valuable to have that networking opportunity and to have this support system and have these people that you can ask and learn from. So that was one of my motivating factors. Another factor was that, I was going to a lot of events. I was seeing that the landscape is mostly male, and most of the top was male. And I was looking into different studies, and I saw that there was a study actually HIMSS did. It was a 9-year study looking at the compensation between 2006 and 2015 between the different genders, and they saw across the board that the average health IT, female health IT employee made considerably less than the average male employee across the board, across different work titles and functional titles. So they also found that the gap actually had widened between 2006 and 2015. So it actually widened 2.7%. So we have a lot of work to do to fix this and to break the glass ceiling and to bring more women to the forefront. So I was very fortunate when I became president, and I had this idea, and I had all this support behind me, and everybody that was very interested in getting involved and very, very interested in helping me put together this event. I was very fortunate to have that. And the advantage with SoCal HIMSS and having Women in Health IT part of SoCal HIMSS is that we have this arena where we can bring the solutions up and we can make changes. We're not just an individual entity where we have great ideas and we have networking. We can actually implement it. If we have ideas, then we can bring it to our agenda and the board, and if we need to bring it to advocacy, we can do that. We can add it to our agenda, and it could be mentioned to our government officials in Sacramento and in DC. And if there's something we need to change in education, we can bring that up to Academic Alliance. So that's great potential that we have, and especially here in SoCal HIMSS, we have such a huge network, over 3,200 members. And we're part of this global and national network where we can also expand and bring more have more power with our ideas. So I'm really excited with the potential and what we can do. So we have a lot coming forward. So you guys, I'm really proud of that. Tonight, we're so fortunate to have such incredible leaders in Southern California. And some of you are sitting out here, and I also want to acknowledge you guys, but we're highlighting 3 executives. So we're very fortunate to have Sarah Richardson, who's closest to me. She's Chief Information Officer at DaVita Medical Group, and she's also a board member from Southern California HIMSS. She's the VP of Advocacy. Next to Sarah, we have Despina Hopkins, who's area CIO at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. She's also a former president of SoCal HIMSS. So she's also one of those female health IT leaders that I had when I was in the board, started in the board. And we also have Kara Marks, who came all the way from San Diego. She's VP of Information Systems. Yes, long commute to get here. And she's a VP of Information Systems at Sharp Healthcare. And an extra tidbit that I learned about her is she was named one of the 20 most powerful females in women in the health IT industry. So we got a star out here. So I'm really proud that she's on our panel tonight. So I'm going to start with some questions. And also, if you guys have specific questions, feel free to come up to the panelists afterwards with your specific questions. And also, if you're on your phones, please post this on social media. And meanwhile, please keep your phones on silent or vibrate. So I'm going to begin with the first question for all panelists is, please tell us about your background, your journey, what you're doing now, how your typical day looks, so know where you come from. So Sarah, you can start.
Okay. So I've been in healthcare, I've been in IT for 25 years now, which is always the most terrifying thing to admit, because I tell people, though, openly, I'm going to be 45 years old, and this is what my journey looks like. I will not give you a 25-year history, only to say that I've been in healthcare IT since 2000. And I had a background in hospitality before that, so it really has helped the journey in how to deliver healthcare in a way that patients and providers want to receive it. And very nonlinear. I worked for HCA for 10 years, so I worked all over the country, and then I went to go work for a smaller hospital company in Florida because I hated the snow in Kansas City, Missouri. And then I got to Florida, and I hated the bugs more than the snow. And I'm a 7th generation California, and I'm a California native, so I wanted to come back home. And when I did that, I made a purposeful decision to find a company that would be great for my skill set that I could grow with, because I was tired of moving, and I knew once I came back to California, I wasn't leaving again. And I'm here almost 3 years. I'm so happy to be home. And but SoCal is my second home. I'm from Santa Rosa, for those of you that know the geography. And it's been a journey. And one of the best things I did was join the SoCal chapter of HIMSS to just learn people and grow my network. It's great to be part of a massive organization. We have a huge footprint in Southern California as healthcare partners. DaVita Medical Group, soon to become Optum Care. And 3 of my teammates are actually here with me tonight, and we're just waiting to become Optum Care. So next time you hear from us, well, that's who we will be, and that alone is a journey. But I've taken a nonlinear approach to working a little bit of everywhere that I thought would be the next opportunity in my career. So I went from California to Las Vegas to Tennessee to Missouri to Florida back to California. And that was a pretty crazy 15, 20 years. But it got me to a place today where I literally have the exact job that I want, and I'm not doing what other people think I'm supposed to do anymore. And that's probably the most liberating thing about the journey that I've taken thus far.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, so I started my journey working in ambulatory offices, and different jobs in a hospital, and wanted to go back to school. I went back to school got my nursing degree, and was an L&D nurse and did nurse management. And I was working at a Sharp hospital, actually, in Temecula, doing physician peer review, and Sharp was actually selling to Tenet. And the CEO called me into his office and said, "There's some changes in in the quality department, but I don't want you to leave the hospital. So if there's anything else in the hospital that you want to do, let me know." And so I went and sat back down at my desk, and then I got back up and went back in his office, and I said, "I want to open the IT department." And I'm not 100% sure what was in my mind at the time. His answer was okay, and that was it. Like, that was my interview. And I started working in IT. So, because essentially when Sharp owned it, and it was dumb terminals, so now you know how old I am. There was only one IT guy, but when Tenet purchased it, we needed a whole IT department. So essentially, I hired a tech, and I followed him around and learned everything from him. And then I did my work at night, and I was getting my master's degree also at night. And that's how I got into healthcare IT, and that was 20 years ago. So from there, I worked in some Tenet hospitals, and then went to a regional position with Adventist Health, and then started at Cedars-Sinai in 2010. About a couple years ago, Cedars purchased Marina Del Rey Hospital and asked me to take over the IT at that hospital, and I've been there ever since. So that's the story.
Hi, my name is Kara Marks, currently from San Diego. I've had a little bit of a journey too. Actually, my career is a blend of both of these descriptions. It's kind of interesting. I hear similarities. I started my career as a nurse clinically. I was born and raised in upstate New York, Syracuse. So that's where I nursed clinically for about 8 to 10 years, and I worked inpatient and ambulatory. I, too, wanted to pursue my master's degree because I felt as a nurse I was not prepared with any business knowledge, and I felt the bedside. I needed to understand how healthcare works, so I always had this natural curiosity. So in going to graduate school, I networked and met people in my community and volunteered with the Alzheimer's Association, which at that time I met a neuropathologist. And when you're a nurse on the floor, you usually don't run into neuropathologists because they're often in the lab. And I said, well, tell me about your typical day. And he said, well, I'm working on this new technology. This was about 1996. And he said, I look through a microscope and I help a surgeon in another city make a decision about how much tissue to remove on a brain surgery on a child. And at that moment, I got goosebumps. And I said, this was blowing my mind. I just had learned what AOL was. So I said, tell me more. And he let me shadow him. And I said, this is transformative. Technology is going to change healthcare, and I want to be a part of it. I literally felt like I read an article in a Women's Day or Cosmo magazine where it said, find your passion, save 6 months worth of salary, and quit your job. And I did that. I followed magazine advice, and I quit my job, and I was on Netscape, and I Googled nurse, computer, and so then finally someone called me, and he said, oh, I'm a recruiter for a company called Cerner, and I said, oh, okay, S-E-R. He's like, no. Anyways, they're hiring nurses who are excited about technology to be translators. And I said, I can talk. I'm good at that. I'm excited and passionate. Flew me to Kansas City, offered me a job, relocated me to Washington, D.C. I spent 8 years with Cerner. I traveled all over the country and the world with them. They really taught me everything, I know, and I'm really grateful for my vendor experience. Although there always comes a time where you get that itch and curiosity again, and I wanted to learn more than what I was doing at Cerner. And I had always told my customers, it's a triangle, and the triangle is software, services, and hardware. I would repeat this all the time. It was early, this would be an immature discussion to have now. And I went to consulting because I felt like I was at a software company. I went to consulting. Through that consulting experience, I met a client who said, we need to hire a CIO and we want you to help us. And I said, I'm not a CIO, that's not my career path. And they said, it's not about, and this was advice from a mentor of mine, it's not about what you think you can do, it's about the skill sets you have and what the organization needs at that time. And I said, okay, I'll be interim. And I ended up being their CIO for 8 years in Arcadia, California, of a 450-bed hospital. And then got the itch after 8 years to do more, wanted to go to a health system, and went to San Diego and tripled my staff and tripled my budget and exposing myself to new things. So long story, but a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. The next question is for all panelists. What was the last book you read?
Or listened to?
Yeah, audiobooks count too.
Okay.
I finished, I read all the time, actually. Airplanes are great for that because it's hard to work on your laptop when people are always looking over your shoulder. So I read books literally on the plane, and I'm on the plane all the time. So Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. He's got 3 books out now. The second one is Homo Deus. The third one is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. His book, Sapiens, was life-changing in just how you look at the world. And it's like everybody's Christmas present this year. And it's amazing. It's literally the best book I've ever read, and I read all of the time. And so I tell you, if you have one book you're going to read in the next year, go pick up Sapiens, and you will literally love it.
Like Homo sapiens?
Yeah, like Homo sapiens. It's like the journey of Homo sapiens over the last 70,000 years.
wow.
And you're literally, the last 15,000 years have been the most transformational in how the planet actually exists and forms itself, et cetera. You may not agree with all of his views, but you have to appreciate his perspective. He is phenomenal.
Interesting. I'm actually reading something like that similar now. But right now, the last one I read was Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. It's fabulous. Have you guys read it?
Yep.
Yeah. So, fabulous book. Yep.
So funny you should mention Sheryl Sandberg, because the last book I read is her latest one called Option B, Facing Adversity, Building Resilience, and Finding Joy after she had a significant and sudden loss of her husband, which is a tragedy I personally experienced as well. And found there to be a lot of good, again, life lessons and support from a woman's perspective on how to manage through loss. So, yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Did you find a lot of parallels with what you're going through, or was it very helpful?
Sudden loss is tragic because it takes the brain a lot of time to process the trauma. Her story, I don't know those of you who know it, but her husband was the CEO of SurveyMonkey, and he was on a treadmill. They were just on a vacation with friends. He didn't show up at dinner. They last knew he was in the gym, and they went to look for him in the gym, and he had fallen off the treadmill and had an immediate, I think it was a cardiac event. So for her, living such a successful life and having children and fame and fortune and to have this loss, it's difficult for the mind to process. So I think, yes, as a woman who you believe your life is going to unfold in a certain way, and you don't think of tragic scenarios. A lot of times we, in our mind, go through, well, if this happens, I would do this, or I'll have this plan B. But losing a spouse is not a scenario that people often think about in a sudden manner. So she talks a lot about that. And, she's a very strong and reflective person. I enjoyed the book very much. So I don't think you have to go through loss to read it, because it also helps you understand how to help people around you who have loss, because there's a lot of awkwardness that people don't know what to say. And then they're often gone after the first 6 or 9 months. People are there in the beginning, and then they're not there long term. And she helped me realize how important it is to support other people. And that's more of a lesson that I've learned through my losses, to help others. So again, another lesson that can translate to even career and supporting people, because we all have different types of experiences.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Everybody goes through their own losses. So another question for all panelists. How much PTO do you use each year, and what do you do with it?
I use all of it. Every last hour.
Good girl.
My first year in this role, and I keep track, I'm pretty meticulous about everything. Everything's a spreadsheet or a checklist, honestly. And I said to my boss, I'm like, I'm going to go into like 4.32 negative hours. He's like, seriously? And I was like, yeah. He goes, I don't really care. I'm like, I just go. Like, don't worry about it. You work enough hours. And then I realized that there's teammates who cash in PTO or who lose PTO. Like, who loses PTO? Like, if you were that person, come find me after this meeting tonight. You should never lose PTO. But the reason I get to do that is that I am an incredibly avid scuba diver. So if anybody likes to go diving, all my discretionary income, minus a few things here and there, all goes to vacation and to trips and to epic adventures, like going to Galapagos in March and getting to dive with schooling hammerheads. Like, I cannot wait. And those are the types of things that I do. And guess what? When you're on a dive boat in the middle of the ocean, there's no internet. They can't find you. And what's empowering about that is that your team will do amazing things when you're there. They do even more amazing things when you're not there, because nobody wants me to come back from a trip and have a complete catastrophe have occurred that they couldn't take care of. So when you can empower your teammates to realize that when you're not there, you're not checking up on them and you're not available, it's an incredible way to build empowerment and build a really high-performing, successful organization, because they know you have their back and vice versa. And I've always set that example, and I'm hopeful. In fact, we have one of our guys today. He's going to Dubai and Pakistan for his trip to see his family. He hasn't been on vacation in years. He's like, you'll be able to reach me no matter what. I'm like, we're going to turn off your account while you're gone. He's like, no, you're not. The fact that he's actually taking a vacation after it's taken me 3 years to convince him and others to convince him to go on a vacation, and he is, and that's that was the highlight of my day when he came in my office and said, I'm going on vacation, and I was like, really? Good for you. So I use all of it because you need to take a time out, but it's also a great way to tell others that your job is not your identity, and it's definitely not your life. It should just be a part of who you are.
Mm-hmm. I agree. 3 years ago, I started going to Greece every year. So I do that.
Is that where you're from?
My family is from Greece. We were able to track down our family, and we went to the little island where they're from. My brother and I, we're travel partners. And it's fabulous. And then the year before last, I went to Greece and Italy both, 2 different times. And so I was out for a month. So I definitely use all of my PTO. I love it. I agree with you. My team is very supportive. They want me to be able to enjoy life too. And so they take care of everything while I'm gone.
So do you shut off when you're on PTO? Or
I do not.
Oh, okay.
They can contact me if they want to. They do very, very rarely.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't bother me, to take a call, because my life is my life and my work is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like I have to shut it all off. Mm-hmm. But I mean, when you're in Europe, everything gets shut off pretty well, pretty nicely. So. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not as good as you guys. Wow, I'm the outlier. I feel like I take a lot of time off and I do prioritize myself, but I have a bank of PTO hours, I'll admit. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I always take long weekends with the holidays, so I make sure that I at least piggyback on that. And then I'll always take at least 2 weeks solid, but I mean, I'll take 1 week. 2 1-week vacations. They're always spent with family or friends. That's what brings me joy, is my family's all back east, so when I can spend and just sit on my mom's couch and she can make me macaroni and cheese, that's what makes me happy. So and I think that both of my peers here made good points, is our staff do watch us, and we are setting examples, and I feel like I'm taking a little bit more time off, and I'm sure to say when I do take time off, what I do on the weekend is for myself. And I've seen some staff turn around too. I had somebody who started to have some medical issues, and he thought it was stress related. And he said, I'm going to start taking my PTO. And I said, hooray, very similar to your story with the gentleman you had. And he just got back from a hike in New Zealand, and it was like a guided hike for a week, and you stop at different lodges and get gourmet meals. So it wasn't really roughing it, but it was kind of like a treat at the end. But you had physical. So, and I felt really proud of him too. So I think we have to remember the example we're setting for people. And I should take more PTO, I promise. Check with me next year.
You can go diving in La Jolla Cove. There's leopard sharks there. They're awesome.
I'm certified with Patty, so I could do it. Yeah.
I should say, actually do this, not this. Do this.
And so, Despina, you're past president of SoCal HIMSS. You have a family of obligations. How do you balance, work, life, family? Does your employer give you specific flexibility for that? How does that work for you?
When as the children were growing up, I've always taken on a lot of responsibility, provided for the family, and I made sure that I attended, with the jobs that I've had in this type of a role, I could always go to the childhood, the events, the school things. I made sure I made those. But definitely took on a lot of responsibility, and Monday through Fridays, I, got home late, and I, did all of the things to also make sure that I'm ready for the next job. And so throughout my entire career, I've always done the job that I would be promoted to. So if I was a manager, I would be doing the work of a director. So I basically did the job before getting the job. And that's just sort of how I handled it, and that's how I feel like I was able to succeed, because I could get into these other roles pretty easily. I was already sort of doing it. So I really focused on, I worked really hard, lots of responsibility, but I took my weekends with the kids and family, and made sure that, everybody got their time. And certainly now, work-life balance is much easier. Yes, my employer, we're always supported to have work-life balance. But again, on Saturday, I might take a business call, and then I take a personal call, and it's just my life. And it doesn't impact me, or
separated.
It doesn't separate, and I'm happy with that.
Okay. Nice. Kara, if you can go back in time with what you know now, back to when you first started your career, what is the biggest advice you would give to yourself when you first started?
Well, if this doesn't include all the bad boyfriends I had, because literally, that's the focus. Why did I waste that time? Come on, it's all happened. Everybody here knows. There's that one you should turn the tape off for this one. So, I thought about this, and my life has always been very intentional. I'm kind of like Sarah. I'm a list person and a doer, and I set my mind to something, and I get it done, and I've had a lot of wonderful experiences. But in reflecting back, it got me thinking with people I talk to today about their careers, and I say, I'll have one of my staff, and they'll say, oh, and I'm in this master's program, and I just learned this thing, and what we're doing right now at work is the same thing I'm learning. And, I miss that experience, because when I went to graduate school, I did it right after my undergrad, and then I couldn't apply the principles and the concepts to anything I was doing, because I was working as a nurse clinically and learning business concepts. So, that got me then thinking down the path of, I probably shouldn't have been so intentional in thinking about next thing, work harder, do more, and slowed down and said, what's the right thing at the right time for what I'm doing to get the most out of it? Where's my pause for reflection? And I think if I had done that a little bit more, Cerner took me around the world. I have to tell you just this one quick sidebar. Cerner sent me to France, and I had to do this presentation to some doctors who were smoking while I was presenting. It was bizarre. And I was in Marseille, and I thought, I'll stay the weekend. So I was trying to take PTO, right? So I stayed the weekend. and I went to the front desk of the hotel, and I said, I'm here, I'm an American, what should I go walk around and do? And they said, get on the train and get off at the next exit. And they're having a little festival, and you'll enjoy it. And I said, okay, so I'm adventurous. I go, okay, the stop I got off at was the Cannes Film Festival. And I was there, like there was red carpets, and I'm just a tourist from, and I bought T-shirts, and I came back, and I said to everyone I knew, please ask me what I did this weekend. It's at the Cannes Film Festival. So, okay, what was the question? Oh, biggest advice, slow down, reflect, and think about what you do, and don't just make it an accomplishment checklist. Really, being intentional is very powerful because you can get through it, but then sometimes you're not understanding the benefit you're getting from that experience at that moment.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like living in the moment. It's so interesting because I feel like when you're a kid, you're looking up to the next step, high school, and then college, and then you start working, and then when you have kids, when are the kids gonna go out? Then the kids go out, and when are you gonna have grandkids? And then what's next? Sometimes you just have to live in the moment. So that's a great piece of advice. Sarah, what is the single best career advice you've received from another woman?
I was incredibly fortunate that when I started my corporate career, I was only 19 because I worked all the way through college because I helped pay for college. And so that was, I started working always. I had a first job at 14. But I was lucky that when I started in corporate America, I also started at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, which at the time was the biggest hotel casino in the world. So when you start your career there, you really think anything's possible because how could it not be? Of course I can do that. We just did that. And my boss at the time, her name is Misty Scott, and we're still friends. And I love her to this day, and I got to actually reference her in an article that's coming out in Talkle Magazine the next month because she always made sure that I knew what was important. It was your studies are important. Don't screw up in school. And to her point, there's always going to be another boy, so get over that one because the next one's coming. Don't worry about it. And I'd be in her office crying, oh, so-and-so just broke up with me and I this. And she's like, go do this report. Go program this system. Go do this. Go do that. And she always kept me focused on the things that were important because when you're 19, you're just spiraling. You don't even know. Exactly. And I worked for her in 3 different companies over the course of 5 or 6 years. And one of the best things she ever did was make sure that I could blindly trust her and I would voluntarily follow her. Because at one opportunity, she said to me, hey, I'm going to go open the next another casino. Do you want to come with me? And I'm like, where are we going? She's like, yes or no. I'm like, well, where are we going? She said, yes or no. And in my mind, if you've been to Vegas, I'm like, this could be the El Cortez, which would be horrifying, a career killer. Or we're going to New York across the street, which was a very likely possibility. And I just looked at her and I'm like, yes. She's like, okay. And it turned out to be New York. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my entire life because I got to do that at 22. But all through that journey, I used to always say to her, what can I do for others? Because you've taught me everything right from the get-go. You've taught me exactly who I always want to be in my life. And she said, the best thing you will ever do is that when you get to a point like me where you can influence and make a difference in other people's lives, that's what you need to do. You need to pay it forward. And the only thing that you will know in terms of success is when you can make a difference in other people's lives that they didn't necessarily believe that they could make on their own. And to this day, that's my core value of who I am as a leader and as a woman, as a friend, as a wife. And I'm grateful to her always. And I always remind her, thank you for teaching me the right things when I was really young.
Wow. She's made such an impact in your life.
She's amazing.
Wow. It's amazing. Kara, what was the most difficult or worst decision you had to make in your career or life? And how did you cope with it? And what was the best decision you've ever made?
Well, I had an opportunity. I always seek out something new. I won't say I get bored, but I like to be constantly stimulated with learning. And in my time at Cerner, I had done a lot of the jobs that were available to me in my role. And I had someone say to me, you would be really good in direct sales. You should be in business development. And I thought, I am a nurse. I don't want to be a salesperson. And this gentleman said, no, I think you'll be really good at it. So, and he said, you can make a lot of money. And okay, then count me in. So I got a direct sales job. And I have to tell you that it was probably, it wasn't a worse decision, but it wasn't something I was happy and flourished in. But to this day, it was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. So I'm grateful and, frustrated by the experience. When you work in sales, the skills that you learn to be successful or people around you our life skills. I mean, my ability to communicate and understand who has the power in an organization, how do I get decisions made, how do I navigate the political nature, who do you go to, who has informal power. Those are all things that you learn because you're trying to get a contract signed. When you take those skills and you apply them to trying to get adoption for CPOE or get out budget money, it's the same skills. So although I wasn't happy as a salesperson and I made average money, what I learned from a competency point, I would never trade in. So,
very cool. Sometimes, like, I guess the worst things can actually be the best learning experience.
It was a bittersweet experience.
Yeah. Great. Despina, what were the biggest contributing factors to your career and personal growth?
Several. Let's see. Well, I think the magic was really the big, getting the HIT job, the IT manager job, in such a quick way, and has led to everything I've done since then. Certainly, volunteering with HIMSS, this Southern California chapter and HIMSS National. Really the growth and, all of you and dear friends that, I'll have forever. Really, it's been just a fabulous road. And so that's certainly something. I've worked for great organizations, Adventist Health, wonderful organization. But really at Cedars-Sinai, great, tremendous growth for myself personally. And what I tell people about it, it's the best place I've ever worked. And what I tell people is that what I love about it is I get to do the right thing every time. I don't have any barriers. I get to do the right thing every time. I'm supported by my own personal leadership as well as the organization leadership in doing that. And so when you have that much freedom and you're allowed to take risks and you're allowed to grow and help other people grow, it's very rewarding, and you grow much faster. And then I think you said personal growth in there as well. Certainly being the mother of my two sons, of course, along all of their journeys, who are now 28 and 24. So that is also, I can't forget that part.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's good.
Yeah.
Sarah, which woman inspires you and why?
My canned answer has always been my mom. And then I was joking with Julie. I'm like, my mom's been driving me nuts lately because she's like, when people are tired, they get very particular. But the reason I always say that is she always has been a big influence in my life for all the right reasons. However, when I think about from a really career perspective, about probably 10 years ago when I worked for HCA, our CIO at the time was a woman. Her name was Noel Williams. And we literally had like a women's book club. And I loved it. And one of the books she had us read was Personal History by Katharine Graham. And Katharine Graham's well known now because of The Post with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, and that became a movie. And that just tells such a small fraction of her life. But one of the biggest drivers that I loved about her was she became the first female Fortune CEO, 500 CEO. And one of the greatest strategies she faced was when her husband was 23 years old, they had 4 kids, he committed suicide. And she became the de facto CEO of the Post, and her father had left it to her, but her husband had run it. And everyone thought she was completely incompetent and not able to do this job. And she did it. She did it for from 1963 to 1991. And even her memoir, which was published in, I think, 98, became a Pulitzer winner. But the parallel in her that I love is that, and the reason I am so close to my mother is my father committed suicide when I was a little kid, and she had to raise us by herself. And to watch the journey of a woman thrown into a situation that she never planned for, never ever considered could happen, and to be raised in an environment where that wasn't something it was not normal. It was not like people would have parents and people would get divorced, but they'd split their time between their mom and their dad. And when you have to explain to people why you only have your mom, it becomes sort of a stigma until you realize that it doesn't define you. And she never let tragedy or anything in her life define her. It just became adversity that she had to overcome. And so when I read her book and I realized that what she had done with her life, she was just always a woman who made tough decisions because she got thrown into scenarios that she didn't necessarily know how to handle, whether it was the death of her husband, whether it was the Pentagon Papers, whether it was Watergate, whatever it was, she handled it with such grace and ease. I thought if you can tackle adversity gracefully, then kudos to you and to anybody that can show you how to do that.
And also not to be ashamed of like the adversity or, you know.
Right.
the
And I've learned too,
tragedy.
by the way, when you do retire, you have the right to complain about the neighbors, the water, the weather, the everything, because you know what? Amen. She's 76. She can complain all she wants. So I love her dearly. And it's just those things where I'm like, that's what happens. You retire and you start to complain about the neighbors all the time because you're home to watch them. So my mom and Catherine Graham.
Great, thank you. So this is going back to Kara. Based on your experience and what you have seen, what are some things that we can do to change the landscape to see more women in top roles, and how can the industry be more inclusive to women?
Hey, you know, I don't have children of my own. I have a stepson, and I did not have an opportunity to interact with a young person's life. So it recently is something I started thinking about after hearing a presentation, and I don't know if any of you attended the CHIME conference that was in San Diego a few weeks ago, but one of the keynote speakers who was very riveting and kind of disruptive, actually, is a woman. I can't think of her first name. Last name's Chang. Emily Chang. Is anyone familiar with Emily Chang? She's a reporter with Bloomberg. She does the tech reporting, and she wrote a book called Brotopia. And she did this presentation, and a lot of what she alluded to is some of the stereotyping and the way that young women are raised to think a way about themselves. And it was a perspective I had never spent a lot of time with. I always thought that my influence was my immediate surroundings, and I could change the people I work with, or I could influence my immediate organization. But she really stimulated some thought with me about how could I help in my community, and start to get people to think about other ways to interact with young women when they're at a very influential point. She talked about groups such as Girls Who Code. And when you look into that nonprofit Girls Who Code, they want to reach children in the middle school years. And think about that. I mean, I know there's some young people in the room, but this is when they're getting clobbered with the social media and who they are and boys. And if you can empower them with another type of skill and discussion. So I think as leaders, we have an obligation not only to our staff, but to our community to volunteer and get involved and have these discussions. I mean, as leaders in your organization, you should always be advocating participation in events like this, looking at the statistics. How many women do we have in this organization? What is their pay? What is the equality? How are they being treated? How are conversations occurring? But I think there's a whole nother effort that has to occur to reach the younger people. So again, we're role models. People look up to us, and we can influence outside our organization. So.
Yeah, there's actually, in Sheryl Sandberg's book, she talks about how girls are called bossy, or certain traits, if girls have them, then it's kind of like a negative connotation to it. So that's cool that they're, with Girls with Code, you're starting when the girls are younger, trying to like socialize them that it's okay to have certain traits or certain tendencies or certain interests. So. Sarah, how do you go about with the political atmosphere and or difficult personalities, especially in a mostly male atmosphere?
I'm going to look at Maureen because we have a stakeholder that every Friday at 3:30, he like just lays it on us. And it's always like, how are we going to react today? No, in general, like Kara said it best, so anytime you join an organization, in any organization, and it's, I mean, whether it's, HIMSS or a new job or something a board that you volunteer on, there is a way that decisions get made in an organization. There is a set of individuals that create the culture of an organization. There are influential powers, there are indirect powers, there are people that they connect with, etc. Observe people in every scenario and watch when decisions are made in your organization. How does that happen? Is it in a boardroom? Is it the sidebar conversations? Is it after hours at a bar? You'll learn a lot about the type of company you want to be a part of based on who and where decisions are made. And one of the decisions I made at one point was to go to Florida. And I realized they recruited me on a context of who they wanted to be. And when I got there, decisions were made by 3 guys on a golf course or in a boardroom after hours because they worked like 12 hours and they thought that was cool. So you come in the next day and the decisions have been made for you. So it really didn't matter how much work or effort or time you'd put into something. I really didn't need to be there. And that's how I sort of worked myself out of that scenario. As I said, you actually don't need me here. And to say that was pretty revealing at the time. And you have to just pay attention to personalities and to how things happen. And the craziest thing is, and we joke about the stakeholder that sort of blows things up on Fridays, but we know that's going to happen. So today we had a huddle before we had a meeting with this person. We were so prepared. The conversation was like 10 minutes. He's like, okay, cool. And I was like, awesome. Because we know our jobs. We know what we're talking about. We know what to do. It's a matter of in what scenario do you get placed where you can perform your best. And being always prepared for those tendencies that might be difficult. What are your triggers? What's going to set you off? What are going to set other people off? When you're sort of always prepared, back in the day, I used to call it my grab and go binder. I literally had a binder. It was like everything that could possibly happen. Like, this is my emergency manual I take with me. You don't really have that anymore. You have the virtual version of what that is. But when you're always prepared for any scenario that can arise, or you know who to call or how to handle things, and you know how things happen in an org, you can navigate just about any political scenario. And to Kara's point as well, it's important if I had to tell you, to learn a couple of things, number one, learn how to negotiate. Mm-hmm. And if you're not comfortable negotiating, read the books, learn it, go to some seminars, be able to negotiate, be able to sell, because when you're in IT, you're always looking for more people, more money. I mean, those are pretty much the things that you're trying to do. And the interesting thing is you're doing it on behalf of the business. So I'm like, why am I have to convince you we need more people to do what you want us to do in the first place? However, that's exactly what I'm doing every day. And the biggest piece is be able to obviously get what your teammates need so that they can be successful, et cetera. Having those tool sets available to you is a constant continuous learning, and then find scenarios where you can practice them, because you're going to have times when you're going to need to do it really well and be able to think on your feet. The coolest thing about having a network like the one that I do is I can call just about anybody and say, will you work through this scenario with me, or what would you do? And this is CIOs all over the country, men and women. And I rarely get caught in the positions where I call it the do you want fries with that scenario, where you're in a meeting and you go, I probably should be serving fries right now, because you just totally lost it. And be prepared and really pick those skills up, and it goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah, if someone's new, if a woman's new in an organization and doesn't really know what the personalities are, and how can they be prepared? So what would they do in that situation?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask, because it might be another woman in the organization, it might not. But again, it goes to watch who has influence, and the best influence in any organization is the person who carries the most indirect influence. Who is able to get things done without being the person that has to make that final decision? Mm-hmm. Because all you have to do is be able to go up to that person and say, hey, I need your help. And I'll tell you right now, when you ask for help, people will respond to you. I need your help. It's a total level of vulnerability. And I ask for it all the time. And then when it really does matter, it's made a huge difference. When you say, thank you, I owe you one, they'll remember that. When they come back in to cash in their favor appropriately, do it, and do it immediately. And you create so much goodwill in an organization almost immediately.
Oh, that's great advice.
Be vulnerable, ask for help.
That's great advice. So, Despina, did you have to make any sacrifices to get to where you are now? If so, what were they, and how did you decide to do it? It's like personal, family, any type of sacrifices.
Sacrifice is probably not the right word. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like I really made sacrifices. I definitely worked really hard and took on responsibility any chance I was given to do that. But I always looked at the benefit. You know, the benefit was more than the salary. Like you mentioned, it was, growth for me, or it was, there was always a reason to be doing it. And so I always try to look at the positive side of it. Definitely, I did not take time for myself. Mm-hmm. So if I gave something up, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. So time for just me, I definitely gave up, for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. But again, worth it, because that time went to my children, and it went to my job, and it went to my career and being able to grow. I have to say that middle management was awful. And, in a way that, you continue to see people sort of get promoted, and you go, well, wait a minute, but they don't know this, and this, and you're doing it, and they're the one with the role, and so that's a really frustrating place to be. I probably didn't, tolerate that as well. So I feel like that's a bit of a sacrifice. But other than that, no, nothing.
Do you have more time for yourself?
I take up all the time I want for myself now. I'm making up for it. My children are grown, and I'm, prancing off to Greece. So yeah, absolutely.
So, going back to Kara, who was your largest support throughout your career, and how did they help support your career advancement?
I feel like I've been working a really long time, and I can't. It was never just one person, because my mom still doesn't understand what my job is. She doesn't. It's hysterical. I try to tell her all the time. She just doesn't get it. She just calls me to fix her computer because she thinks my job is something to do with computers. It's really crazy. I've had many mentors and people that have helped me through my career. A quote, it's a practice at Sharp Healthcare that we start every meeting with a reflection. And it's very ironic because there was a reflection that I used in a meeting today, which I want to share with you. And I think it sums up about why these people were my mentors and why I give them credit for my advancement. The way to develop the best that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. And that is actually, when I thought back of all the people, when I was a nurse at a doctor's office and wanted to learn more about business, when I met the doctor that was doing telemedicine and he got me excited and passionate about making a change, when I met a CFO who said that she needed certain skills and said I could be a CIO, all of those things were just people who'd said, not that they want to formally be my mentor, can I be your mentor, will you be my mentor? It was people who gave me a chance and then encouraged me that I had the potential to do it. And the power of someone just believing in you and saying you can do it is amazing. It's really amazing. And, if you read about the challenges that women have in their careers and being successful, one common statement is the imposter syndrome, and that quite often we think that we're not capable, and what we're doing is we shouldn't really have what we have. And surround yourself with people, because those are the ones that propelled me to the levels that I am in my career, and I'm just very grateful. And I don't think they even knew the impact that they had, but a little word of encouragement or appreciation can go a long way, so just pass it on.
Encouragement's very powerful. So, I actually said Thomas Edison, I'm sure everybody knows Thomas Edison, inventor. Hello. Thomas Edison, he made it through encouragement. I think it's working now.
Is it on?
So he was expelled from school, and he came home with a note, and he gave it to his mom, and his mom read it, and he asked his mom, "What does this say?" And the mom said, "Oh, this says that you're a very bright kid, you're too advanced for school, so I'm going to be teaching you myself." And so he thought that he was like a gifted child, and he went on his life, and then later on, when his mother passed away, he found this letter, and it actually said, "Your kid is it was negative. It was something negative about him, and then he's expelled from school." So you can only imagine that if he read the original letter, if she told him what the original letter said, he would have been destroyed, and all the inventions that he had would not have been invented or not been created. So just the power of encouragement. So just keep that in mind for yourself and for others that are around you. So going back to Sarah, you have switched from a hospital to a medical group organization. How did these two organizations contrast from each other? What was the reason for your change?
Not an AV, that's one of the things. Okay. So I was in hospital business for 15 years, and it was formative and wonderful, and I got to, have 15 hospitals and 100 clinics and do just really amazing things and bring different groups together and open and close and acquire and merge and you name it, and build new ones and close ones and whatnot. But I believe in reinvention on a pretty regular scale, and I wanted to do something different, but I didn't want to leave healthcare IT. And there was something and I knew when I was coming back to California that California is the land of managed care and risk and global contracts and all those things. And I'm like, you know what, that's pretty fascinating and different, because I didn't know anything about how medical groups ran. We had a lot of clinics working for profit and non-for-profit hospital systems, but it wasn't its own self-contained business. And I also realized, and for those of you that work in health and hospital systems, I totally get it, but I also realized that we're starting to move away from hospitals being the center of patient care, and more of the work is going out and the care is going out into clinics and home-based care and different opportunities. And I just wanted to be at the forefront of how you can merge technology with a new setting that's coming along and be a pioneer of what's happening. So it's just been really fortunate. And I made the joke in the car, and I'll say it, when you work in a hospital, the interface in the NICU breaks at 3 o'clock in the morning, every time on a Saturday. And, I spent a lot of my career up all night fixing things that broke. And when Despina and I were talking about doing data center migration, we just finished 6 states moving data centers into one location in Lone Mountain, Nevada. And it was a lot of work, and it was hard, and it was a lot of hours, but guess what? We're open 7 to 7. So we could do migrations at night, and we could do migrations on the weekend, because the 2 urgent care clinics that are open 24 hours, they're okay if we tell them there's going to be downtime this weekend. So it just became a different type of focus in the setting of healthcare. In some ways, to me, it's more complicated, because I do believe that it's harder to learn newer and different things as you get older. I totally believe that, because they have to completely say, I know everything there is to know about fee-for-service hospital models, and I'm going to go learn everything there is to know about managed care in a primary care setting. It took me over a year to be comfortable with the dialogue, and there's days when I'll still walk into Julie's office and go, what does this mean? And she'll be like, this is what it means, because she literally knows more than anybody in our company about some of this stuff from an IT perspective and from the business perspective. So I just wanted to learn something new and different, and I tried the hat on, and I love it, and I'm just really lucky that I got to join an organization that was the leader in what they did in that space.
Mm-hmm. So it's good to always switch things up. Mm-hmm. You never know if you're going to like something more. Despina, how has the health IT field changed in the past 5 years, and what do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, there's been tremendous change in the past 5 years. Let's see, so everyone got their EMRs.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at data, and then we have, now we have AI and the cloud, and lots of startups and innovation, and it's exciting that we have the non-industry companies, Google and Amazon, and everybody's trying to help with this effort. But over the next 5 to 10 years, what I really feel like we did, so first of all, technology is just screaming along. It's fast. Our industry is we're faster than we were. We're doing pretty good, but it's not as fast as it needs to be. I think you were saying you were in banking, and one of the things I always say is that, I can take my ATM card and go anywhere and get money, anywhere in the world, but nobody can tell me what medications grandma has to take. Nobody can tell me, right? So we're doing some things still really wrong. And essentially, I think what we did is, baby boomers, myself included, what we did was we said, how are we going to take our paper systems and put them into an electronic medical record? And that's what we did. What I wish we had said is, how can we create a medical record system to give better care to our patients, an electronic system to take care of our patients? And so that's what we're going to do in the next 5 to 10 years, because we have to. We absolutely have to. Obviously, I'm passionate about this. We have to get the physician first and the nurse second out from behind the computer and back in front of the patient. But what we're going to do is are now going to be in front of the patient with data. They're going to have data. They're going to have analytics. They're going to have predictive analytics. They're going to know that something has to happen with this patient because everything, all of the clinical signs are showing where they're going to be heading here within the next 12 hours, and so you're going to stop it now. And so that's where we have to be, and that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a very interesting transition. So going to Kara, what is the biggest challenge in the field at the moment? What will be the biggest challenge for the generation of women behind you?
That is a very, I could probably take a long time to answer that because certainly there's a lot today. I mean, what's happening just most recently with the Me Too movement. I mean, if you just look at some of the momentum of different discussions that are occurring, today there's a lot of challenges. I don't know if I could say just one, but if I was forced to pick like a category, I think I would say the biggest challenge today is just being treated equally and treating each other with mutual respect. And I have to say that's not just male to female, it's female to female. There is still, meetings that I go to in my organization, and, we're 18,000 employees. We're the largest employer in San Diego. And there's still meetings I'll go in and I'll think I have an ally in a female executive sitting next to me, and I don't. I feel like she's competing with me. And she has no reason to be threatened. It's just perplexing sometimes. And then I'll also have men who are dismissing my opinion before I've even explained it, and it's just not giving me mutual respect. So I really feel like that's what's at hand today. And just like any type of change and transformation, we've all dealt with changes, there has to be an awareness and acknowledgement of that issue by all parties involved. So I feel like that's the issue today. And for future generations is, how do we get those around us to participate in the change? So we're here tonight learning about how we can acknowledge it in ourselves and in the circumstances around us. But in the future, we have to think about, how do I get my peer Despina to treat me with mutual respect? How do I get my boss to treat me? How do I get my friends' children to speak to each other? So it's more of a cultural thing. And as far as timing, I did look up some dates because I was like, someone's going to say, well, when will this all be settled, Kara? And I'll say, well, in 1920 is when women got the right to vote, which doesn't seem that long ago. And it was in 1974 is when a first single woman was able to get a credit card approved on her own. 74. Wow. Okay, so the time between 20 being able to vote and 74 is 54 years. And then in 2013 is when women were allowed to participate in the military. That was yesterday. So when you're asked a question like, what is the challenge today and what are future generations, I'm sometimes not that hopeful to think that future generation is going to be that different, but it's got to be culturally. Sure, it can begin with with community. I think pop culture is very influential. Who has Amazon Prime? Okay, wow. Okay, so has anyone watching the series, it's a Prime original, Good Girls Revolt? Anyone seen that yet? Okay, so on the weekend when you're washing your dishes and you have the TV, it's not bad. What it is, I don't think I'm thrilled with the name, and I'd like you guys to, I'm curious what you think about the name, but it's timed into, I think, like early 60s, and it's about a bunch of women reporters who are acting as secretaries, but they want to report the story and they're not letting them, so they get involved with some equality and go on strike and get, I can't remember all the details, but anyways, it's enjoyable, it's lighthearted, it's nice, it's reality. But think about the name, Good Girls Revolt. You know what? I'm kind of offended by the title. But the content is good. So we just have to keep working through this stuff and raising awareness and just having discussions. I mean, just saying, what do I think about that? I might not be able to change it, but if I'm just talking about it will someday take us to the change. And that's all I can say for our future generations. And those of you with young children, I mean, they're our future, so have the discussions.
Despina, Sarah, you have anything to add to that? Despina and Sarah, do you have anything about the challenges that are to come?
Be nice. You know, I always think about the one thing, if you could only do one thing every single day, be kind to others. And especially support everybody. And then to Kara's point, like, support women in your organization.
Yeah.
And be nice to each other, because your biggest ally is going to be that other person sitting there, and really take time to foster the women in your organization and make them feel special and important, and figure out how they can manage all the things going on in their life, because you're going to need their support too. When you have it with each other, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I'll add to your be nice. I absolutely, of course, you're nice to all the friends and the folks that are nice to you. But I also make an effort to be nice to the people who've just thrown me under the bus or whatever. And, you know, sometimes and many times I found that they turn around. They're all of a sudden, they're your supporter, and you're going, oh, okay, that's good too. Let's do that more. But you know, at the end of the day, it's more frustrating for me to be upset than it is to be nice anyway. So I think it works out well.
Oh, that's good advice. So we're out of time for more questions, but we learned a lot tonight. So many perspectives, so much advice. And before we end, I'd like to leave you with a blessing and a message for hope that Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook has. She wrote this book, Lean In, which some of our speakers have spoken about. So the blessing is, I hope you find true meaning, contentment, and passion in your life. I hope you navigate the difficult times and come out with greater strength and resolve. I hope you find whatever balance you seek with your eyes wide open. And I hope that you, yes, you, have the ambition to lean in to your career and run the world, because the world needs you to change it. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.